The unexpected inheritance. Jake Carter never believed in luck. He was just an ordinary guy, delivering packages for a living, struggling to pay rent, and dreaming of a better life. He had no family, no savings, and definitely no future beyond his small apartment in the city. But everything changed on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. Jake had just returned home from work when his phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. "Congratulations, Supreme Ruler. Your inheritance awaits." Jake frowned. Spam message, obviously. He ignored it. A second message arrived immediately. "Do not ignore this. Your empire is waiting. The transfer process has begun." Jake scoffed and tossed his phone on the couch. "Yeah, right. My empire. Sure." Then the lights flickered. A deep hum filled the room, vibrating through the floor. Something was coming. Before Jake could react, two figures appeared out of thin air in the middle of his apartment. Two stunning women stood before him. One had long silver hair, piercing blue eyes, and wore a high-tech uniform lined with glowing symbols. The other had short, dark hair, violet eyes, and a sleek black outfit that looked both futuristic and dangerous. Jake stumbled backward, knocking over a chair. "W, who the hell are you? How did you get in here?" The silver-haired woman stepped forward gracefully, her voice calm but firm. "I am Lorana, your royal advisor. This is Tyra, your security chief. We have come to escort you to your throne." Jake blinked. His throne. This had to be some kind of prank. "You've got the wrong guy," he said, raising his hands. "I'm Jake Carter. I deliver packages. I don't have a throne." Zyra, the dark-haired woman, smirked. "You do now." Before Jake could argue, a holographic screen appeared in front of him, floating in midair. It showed a massive galactic empire, dozens of planets, and one name at the top. Supreme Ruler, Jake Carter. His heart pounded. No way. This isn't real. Lorana tilted her head. "You are the last living relative of Emperor Solarian IX. By galactic law, you have inherited his throne." Jake's mouth went dry. "I don't even know an Emperor Solarian." Zyra crossed her arms. "It doesn't matter. Your DNA was linked to him through an ancient treaty. The Empire needs a leader, and you are the only one left." Jake stared at them. This was insane. This was impossible. He was a nobody. How could he be an emperor? Then the apartment shook violently. Outside, the sky turned dark as a massive spaceship hovered above the city, covering the skyline. Lorana's expression turned serious. "The Empire's fleet is here. They have come to take you to the capital." Jake ran to the window. His jaw dropped. The entire city had stopped. Cars weren't moving. People stood frozen in the streets, all staring at the impossible sight above them. A spaceship the size of a skyscraper slowly descended, its surface covered in glowing blue runes, humming with power. Jake's head spun. No, I'm not going anywhere. I have a life here." Lorana sighed. "If you refuse, the Empire will fall into chaos. Rival factions will fight for power. Billions could die." Zyra added, "And Earth will not be safe either. Many see your planet as weak. If they believe you are unfit to rule, they will invade." Jake felt dizzy. "You're telling me, if I don't go, Earth could be attacked?" Lorana nodded. "Yes." For a long moment, Jake didn't say anything. His heart pounded in his chest. This wasn't fair. He never asked for this. But he knew one thing. He couldn't let Earth be destroyed because of him. With a deep breath, he turned back to them. "What happens if I say yes?" Lorana's lips curled into a small smile. "Then you take your rightful place, and we will protect you, with our lives." Zyra grinned. "And trust me, Supreme Ruler, you're going to need protecting." The spaceship sent down a beam of light, wrapping around them. Jake felt himself lift off the ground, pulled toward the unknown. His life as an ordinary Earthling was over. whether he was ready or not. He was now the ruler of a galactic empire, and someone out there wanted him dead. A king without a clue. Jake Carter was weightless. 1 second, he had been standing in his tiny apartment. The next, a beam of light pulled him skyward, lifting him into the belly of an impossibly massive spaceship. His stomach twisted as he shot through a shimmering energy barrier and landed inside a sleek, futuristic chamber. He stumbled forward, trying to stay upright. His knees wobbled, and he almost fell. Ugh, I think I'm gonna be sick. Kazira caught him by the arm, her grip stronger than steel. Get used to it, Supreme Ruler. There's no ground in space. Jake blinked, realizing something terrifying. He was no longer on Earth. Everything inside the ship looked too clean, too perfect, like it was designed by a civilization far beyond human understanding. The walls pulsed with faint blue light. The floor was smooth, cool metal. Strange symbols floated in the air, rearranging themselves as Jake moved. Where the hell am I? He muttered. Lorana stepped forward, her expression composed. Welcome to the Imperial flagship, Eterna Prime. It is the heart of the Empire's fleet and your new home. Jake groaned. I didn't even get to pack a bag. Zyra smirked. Don't worry, you won't need your Earth clothes where we're going. A loud humming sound filled the chamber. The floor beneath them shifted. Jake's stomach lurched again as he realized the ship was moving. A large viewing window opened in front of him, and his breath caught. Space stretched endlessly before him. Thousands of distant stars sparkled in an ocean of darkness. Gigantic ships, sleek, black vessels with glowing red engines, moved in perfect formations, surrounding the Eterna Prime like an escort of silent guardians. Jake grabbed his head, overwhelmed. This was too much, too fast. I don't get it, he said, his voice cracking. How am I supposed to rule anything? I don't know anything about space. I barely know how to do my taxes. Lorana tilted her head, watching him carefully. You were chosen by fate. You will learn. Jake exhaled, rubbing his temples. And if I don't want to? Zira crossed her arms. Then you'll die. His stomach dropped. Excuse me. Lorana sighed. You have enemies, Supreme Ruler. Many powerful factions do not want a human sitting on the throne. Some will try to remove you. Jake swallowed hard. By remove, you mean kill. Yes, Lorana confirmed, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. Jake ran a hand through his hair, his mind racing. This was insane. Completely insane. So what? I'm supposed to just sit on some fancy throne and make decisions. Lorana shook her head. It is far more complicated. You must be crowned, tested, and accepted by the Grand Council. Only then will your rule be legitimate. Jake raised an eyebrow. And if they don't accept me? Zyra's violet eyes flashed with amusement. Then we fight. Jake let out a nervous chuckle. Yeah, that's exactly what I wanted to hear. Arrival at the throne world. After what felt like hours of flying, the ship finally entered the atmosphere of a planet. Jake had seen pictures of Earth from space, but this was something else. Below them stretched an enormous city planet, glowing with silver towers, bridges, and neon-lit highways that extended for miles in every direction. Ships zipped through the air like insects, perfectly synchronized in motion. The capital of the Empire. His empire. As the ship landed in the central docking bay, Jake barely had time to process what was happening before the doors slid open. And outside, waiting for him, stood an army. Thousands of armored soldiers lined up in perfect formation, their helmets reflecting the bright lights of the city. A massive crowd had gathered beyond them, murmuring in hushed voices. Some looked curious. Others looked angry. A large golden platform stretched before him, leading up to an ornate palace that shimmered in the distance. It was his throne. Jake stared in horror. Okay, this is officially terrifying. Lorana and Tyra flanked him, standing tall. "Stay close," Lorana murmured. "Do not show fear." Jake nearly laughed. Too late. As he stepped forward, a voice boomed through the air. "Presenting His Supreme Majesty, the new Emperor of the Celestial Dominion." The words echoed like thunder. The soldiers snapped to attention, saluting in perfect unison. Jake forced himself to keep walking, even though his legs felt like jelly. He was about to sit on the most powerful throne in the galaxy, and he had no idea what he was doing. The Council of Shadows. The palace was even more impressive inside. Golden walls, floating chandeliers, and a ceiling so high it vanished into the mist above. But Jake barely had time to admire it before he was led into a grand hall, where the most powerful beings in the Empire sat waiting. A long, curved table stretched before him. Seated around it were alien leaders, generals, and advisors, all dressed in robes and armor that screamed wealth and power. Their eyes bored into him, filled with skepticism. At the head of the table sat a man with dark blue skin, sharp angular features, and piercing red eyes. He was Chancellor Vorsk, head of the Imperial Council. "You are the human who has claimed our throne," Vorsk said, his voice smooth, but laced with hidden danger. Jake forced a smile. Yeah, that would be me." The council members exchanged looks. Vorsk leaned forward. "Tell me, Earthling, what qualifies you to rule over us?" Jake's mind went blank. This was it, the moment he had to prove himself. He had no experience, no training, no plan. And if he said the wrong thing, he might not leave this room alive. Assassins, politics, and space thrones. Jake Carter stood in the heart of the Imperial Palace, surrounded by the most powerful figures in the galaxy, and he had no idea what to say. The council chamber was enormous, its walls lined with towering banners, each representing a different star system under his rule. The room pulsed with a quiet energy, an invisible weight of tradition and authority. Across the table, Chancellor Vorsk, the blue-skinned alien with piercing red eyes, watched him like a predator. The council members sat in silence, their faces cold and unreadable. "You are the human who has claimed our throne," Vorsk had said. Jake hesitated. He felt the weight of 100 alien eyes staring at him, waiting for his answer. His hands were sweaty. His heart pounded. He was an ordinary guy from Earth who had somehow inherited a space empire. What was he supposed to say? A dozen different responses flashed through his mind. He could lie. He could make something up. He could try to act like a king. Instead, he took a deep breath and did the only thing he was good at. He told the truth. "I didn't ask for this," he said. "I didn't grow up in a palace. I don't know your laws. I don't know your customs. Hell, I don't even know how to fly a spaceship." A few council members exchanged glances. Some smirked. Others scowled. But Jake continued, stepping forward. "I know one thing. If I'm sitting on this throne, it means your old emperor is gone. It means your empire needs someone to lead it. And like it or not, that's me." A murmur ran through the council chamber. Some of them whispered among themselves. Others just stared. Vorsk raised an eyebrow. "So you admit you are unqualified?" Jake shrugged. "Yeah, probably. But I'm here, aren't I?" Silence. Then, to Jake's surprise, someone chuckled. A tall, reptilian alien with shimmering gold scales leaned forward, amusement flashing in his slit pupil eyes. "I like him," the alien said, his voice deep and rumbling. "He's honest." Vorsk shot the reptilian a sharp look, but the damage was done. A few other council members nodded slightly. Jake exhaled. He had survived the first test. But he wasn't safe yet. The first attempt on his life. The council session lasted 3 more hours. They grilled Jake on his knowledge of the Empire, which was non-existent, questioned his abilities, which he didn't have, and tested his patience, which was running thin. Through it all, Lorana and Syra stood at his side, their eyes sharp, watching for any threats. Finally, the meeting ended. Jake was led into an enormous banquet hall where a coronation feast had been prepared in his honor. Exotic alien foods covered the long silver tables. Shimmering drinks bubbled in floating glasses, and 100 nobles whispered about their new Earthling emperor. Jake sat at the head of the table, his stomach growling. For the first time all day, he allowed himself to relax. Then Syra grabbed his wrist. "Don't drink that," she said. Jake froze. His golden goblet was halfway to his lips. Syra sniffed the liquid, then set it down gently. "It's poisoned." Jake's blood ran cold. "Poisoned." Lorana leaned in, her silver eyes narrowing. "Someone inside the palace wants you dead." A shiver ran down Jake's spine. This wasn't just politics. This was assassination. Syra signaled to a guard, who quickly removed the goblet. "We need to leave," she whispered. But before Jake could respond, the lights suddenly flickered. The air grew tense, like something was about to snap. And then, the assassins struck. The Shadow Blades attack. A crackling energy field erupted in the middle of the hall. A dozen black-clad figures materialized, their faces hidden behind sleek masks. Gasps echoed through the chamber. The nobles scrambled away from the intruders. Jake's chair slammed backward as Syra drew her weapons. "The Shadow Blades," Lorana muttered. "Elite assassins." One of the masked figures pointed a glowing blade directly at Jake. "The throne does not belong to an Earthling," the assassin growled. "Your rule ends tonight." Jake swallowed hard. "So, talking this out isn't an option." The assassin lunged forward. Syra moved faster than lightning, intercepting the blade with her own. Sparks flew as metal clashed against energy, and the banquet hall erupted into chaos. Guards rushed forward, drawing weapons. The assassins vanished and reappeared, teleporting across the room in quick bursts of light. Jake ducked as a blade sliced through the air where his head had been a moment ago. "Move." Lorana grabbed his arm, pulling him away from the fight. "But no arguments. You need to stay alive." Jake ran, his heart hammering as the battle raged behind him. Syra fought like a demon, her movements precise and deadly. Lorana kept him close, deflecting any attacks that came their way. Then, just as they reached the exit, a dark figure dropped down from above, blocking their path. This assassin was different, taller, more imposing, and he wasn't holding a blade. He was holding a gun. Jake's breath caught. "Oh crap." The assassin raised his weapon, the barrel glowing with energy. "You were never meant to sit on that throne, human." Jake's muscles tensed. He couldn't move. The assassin's finger tightened on the trigger. Bang! A single shot rang out. For a moment, Jake didn't know what happened. Then the assassin staggered, a glowing wound in his chest. He fell backward, hitting the floor with a heavy thud. Jake turned, stunned. Syra lowered her smoking gun, her violet eyes gleaming. "Like I said," she muttered, holstering her weapon. "You're gonna need protection." Aftermath. The first threat eliminated. The remaining assassins fled, vanishing into thin air as quickly as they had come. The guards rushed in to secure the palace. The nobles were terrified, whispering among themselves. Jake exhaled, his hands shaking. He had just survived an assassination attempt on his first night as emperor. Lorana knelt beside the fallen assassin, checking his armor. "They weren't working alone," she said. "This was an inside job." Syra nodded grimly. "Someone in the council wants you dead." Jake closed his eyes. He had been emperor for less than a day, and already people were trying to kill him. If he wanted to survive, he needed to learn how to fight back. The war begins. Rivals strike first. Jake Carter sat alone in his new imperial chamber, staring at his reflection in the polished surface of his desk. His heart was still pounding from the assassination attempt. He had barely been emperor for a day, and already someone had tried to kill him. Someone inside the palace. Syra had saved his life. Lorana had warned him that enemies lurked in every shadow. But the reality of it was hitting him now. This wasn't just a game of politics. This was survival. A soft chime interrupted his thoughts. The doors slid open, and Lorana entered, her expression unreadable. "We have a problem." Jake sighed, rubbing his temples. "Of course we do. What now?" She stepped forward, placing a holographic tablet on the desk. The screen flickered to life, showing a massive fleet of warships. Dark, spiked vessels moving toward a nearby system. "The Warlord faction is making their move," Lorana said. "They are seizing control of 3 border planets." Jake frowned. "I thought they were part of the Empire." "They were," Lorana replied. "But with the throne unguarded, they see an opportunity. They believe a human ruler is weak." Jake's stomach tightened. "So what are we supposed to do?" Zyra stepped in from the side. "We fight." Jake blinked. "Fight. Just like that." Lorana's silver eyes darkened. "You're the Emperor now. If you do nothing, you will look weak. The Empire will collapse, and Earth will be vulnerable." Jake swallowed hard. He had been Emperor for barely 24 hours, and he was already being thrown into a war. This was too much. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't a leader. But if he hesitated, the Empire would fall apart. Jake clenched his fists. He had no choice. "All right," he said, standing. "Tell me what I need to do." A crash course in warfare. The war room was enormous. A circular chamber with a holographic map of the Empire floating in the center. High-ranking generals, admirals, and strategists stood in silence as Jake entered. Their expressions were a mix of doubt and curiosity. Jake cleared his throat. Hey." No one responded. Lorana quickly took over, pointing at the map. "The Warlord faction is led by Commander Tovek, a brutal military leader with 30 warships under his command." A red icon flickered over a region of space. "They have already taken control of 3 systems. If we don't stop them, they will move closer to the capital." Jake rubbed his chin. "What's their weakness?" The room fell silent. Lorana blinked. "Their weakness." Jake nodded. "Yeah, you just told me their strength, but every army has a weak point, right?" The generals exchanged glances. One of the admirals, a battle-scarred alien with mechanical implants, stepped forward. "Tovak is overconfident. His fleet is strong, but he relies too much on brute force." Jake's mind started working. He had played strategy games before. He had seen war movies. Maybe he could use that knowledge now. "What if we set a trap?" he asked. The admiral tilted his head. "A trap?" Jake pointed at the map. "What if we let Tovak take 1 more system, but we make him think he's winning? Then, when he overextends, we cut off his supply lines and surround him." Silence. Then the admiral grinned. "That might actually work." Lorana looked at Jake with new respect. Zyra smirked. Maybe he's not completely useless after all. The Battle of Orion's Rift. The fleet launched 12 hours later. Jake stood on the bridge of Eterna Prime, watching as thousands of ships moved into formation. The capital's defense fleet was one of the most powerful in the galaxy, but they were up against Tovak's war-hardened forces. If Jake's plan failed, the Empire would be thrown into chaos. Zyra stood beside him, arms crossed. "Are you ready for this?" "Nope," Jake admitted. The countdown began. 3, 2, 1. Engage. The fleet jumped into hyperspace. When they arrived, Tovak's fleet was already occupying the system, his warships bombarding the helpless colony planet. Jake's fists clenched. "We have to stop them." Lorana nodded. "We will, if your plan works." The battle began instantly. Tovak's fleet turned to face them, their cannons charging up. But Jake had already set the trap. Before the enemy could react, his forces moved into position, cutting off their escape. "Now," Jake shouted, The Imperial fleet launched a surprise counterattack, targeting Tovek's fuel and supply ships. Explosions erupted in space as several enemy cruisers were destroyed in seconds. Tovek realized too late that he had been tricked. His ships were surrounded. Jake watched in awe as his plan actually worked. For the first time, he felt like maybe, just maybe, he wasn't a complete failure. The battle raged for an hour. And then, a message flashed on the screen. "Commander Tovek is hailing us." Jake hesitated, then nodded. "Put him through." The screen flickered, revealing a massive alien with scarred red skin and sharp black eyes. Tovek's expression was pure rage. "You tricked me," he growled. Jake smirked. "Yep." Tovek's nostrils flared. "This is not over, human. You may have won today, but you will not hold this empire for long." The transmission cut off. And just like that, Tovek's fleet retreated into deep space. Jake let out a long breath. He had just won his first war. But Lorana's expression remained tense. "This victory will not go unnoticed," she said. "Other enemies will come. And next time, they won't underestimate you." Jake exhaled, staring at the stars. He was an emperor now, and this was only the beginning. The truth about the Empire, dark secrets unveiled. The war was over, or at least, this war was over. Jake Carter had won his first battle as emperor, outmaneuvering Commander Tovek and securing his place on the throne. The fleet was returning home, victorious. His name was already spreading across the empire. Some called him a cunning strategist, others called him a lucky fool. But the truth, Jake was exhausted. The moment he stepped off the bridge and back into the Imperial Palace, he felt the weight of the throne crushing down on him again. "Get some rest," Lorana suggested as they walked down the hall toward his quarters. "You'll need it." Jake frowned. "Why? What now?" She hesitated before answering. "Now that you have proven yourself in battle, the Council will want you to make real decisions. About the Empire. About its future." Jake exhaled. He had no idea how to run an empire. But before he could even process that, an urgent message flashed across his holographic wrist communicator. "Urgent, high priority FILEs. UNOCKED for Imperial Access." Jake raised an eyebrow. "What's this?" Lorana's expression darkened. "The previous Emperor's classified files." Jake hesitated. He had so many questions about his so-called inheritance. He still didn't know why he was chosen, or what happened to the last emperor. This might be his only chance to get real answers. "Show me everything," Jake said. "The Empire's darkest secret." Jake sat in his private chamber, the room dimly lit by a glowing holographic screen that filled the air with scrolling text, classified reports, and encrypted messages. His eyes widened as he read. The Empire wasn't what he thought it was. It had been built on centuries of war, conquest, and brutal expansion. The previous emperors had ruled with iron fists, forcing weaker civilizations into submission. Whole planets had been conquered, stripped of resources, and enslaved. Jake's stomach twisted. This was not the noble empire he had imagined. This was a galactic superpower built on oppression. His hands clenched into fists as he scrolled further. There were records of genetic experiments, forced labor camps, entire species classified as expendable by the ruling elite. And then, Jake's breath caught in his throat. Humans, his people, Earthlings, had been on the Empire's radar for centuries. There were classified reports on Earth, files detailing how humans had once been considered too primitive to be worth conquering. And yet, Jake scrolled further, his heart pounding. A shocking report from only a few years ago appeared on the screen. Classified Projekt Earth Observation Status High Threat Potential RESONNINDATION Monitor and ACCS Humanities Growth Intervention may be necessary. Jake froze. They had been watching Earth, studying it, waiting for the right moment. Jake's blood ran cold. Had he not inherited this throne, would the Empire have eventually conquered Earth? He leaned back, his mind spinning. This Empire wasn't just corrupt. It had been planning to take his home. And now he was in charge of it. A dangerous proposition. Before Jake could process everything, his chamber doors slid open. Lorana and Syra walked in, their expressions serious. "You know now," Lorana said quietly. Jake rubbed his face. "Yeah, I know. The Empire is built on conquest and war, and Earth was probably next." Lorana nodded. "The truth is harsh. But now that you wear the crown, you have the power to change things." Jake let out a bitter laugh. "Change things? The whole system is corrupt. I have a council that already wants me dead. If I start talking about dismantling their empire, I won't last a week." Syra smirked. "Then don't talk about it. Do it in secret." Jake frowned. "What?" Lorana's eyes gleamed. "You cannot openly oppose the council yet. They are too powerful. But you can make small moves, weaken their influence, dismantle the old ways piece by piece." Jake hesitated. Could he really do that? Play the game while secretly undermining it? He took a deep breath. "All right," he said finally. "Let's say I want to change things. Where do we start?" Lorana pulled up a holographic star map. "There is a system known as Velderi Prime," she explained. "A planet under Imperial control, but its people still resist. They are forced to mine valuable resources for the Empire, and the conditions are brutal." Jake's jaw tightened. "Slave labor." Lorana nodded. Syra grinned. "If you free them, it will send a message. You will earn real loyalty from the people." Jake stared at the map, his heart pounding. This was his chance. His first real move as Emperor. He couldn't fight the Council directly. Not yet. But he could start changing the Empire from within. And if they found out, well, he'd deal with that when the time came. Jake stood, determination hardening in his chest. "All right," he said. "Let's go free a planet. The rise of a new emperor." The next morning, Jake summoned the fleet. Officially, he was sending an inspection team to Velderi Prime. Unofficially, he was going to liberate it. The Council would see this as nothing more than a routine visit. But soon, they would realize the truth. That their new emperor wasn't like the ones before him. That he wasn't going to be their puppet. That he was going to change everything. As the fleet prepared to depart, Lorana stepped beside him. "Are you ready?" Jake smirked. "Not even a little." Syra chuckled. "Good. That means you won't be reckless." Jake took a deep breath. He had come a long way from a broke delivery driver on Earth. Now he was a king, a revolutionary, and the most wanted man in the Empire, whether he knew it yet or not. And things were only going to get more dangerous from here. Earth in danger. Jake's ultimate challenge. Jake Carter had made his first move. He wasn't just playing Emperor anymore. He was changing the game. His decision to free the enslaved planet Velderi Prime had sent a shockwave across the Empire. The oppressed cheered his name, calling him the first ruler in centuries to bring hope. But inside the Imperial Council, they were furious. Jake sat in the war room aboard Eterna Prime, watching as encrypted messages poured in. "Supreme Ruler, the Council demands an explanation for your reckless actions. Your interference in Velderi is unacceptable. We will not tolerate weakness. Tovak is amassing forces in the Outer Rim. He will not stop until you are dead." Jake sighed and leaned back in his chair. "Yep, that went about as well as expected." Lorana stood beside him, her arms crossed. "You forced their hand. The Council cannot publicly oppose you without looking weak themselves. But now, they will move in secret." Syra smirked. "Which means assassins. Lots of them." Jake rubbed his temples. "Great. More assassins. Just what I needed." Then, A sudden red alert flashed across the war room's holographic table. Jake frowned. What now? The image zoomed in, showing a distress signal coming from the Sol system. Jake's blood ran cold. Earth. A surprise attack on Earth. The screen flickered, revealing a live transmission from Earth's orbital defense station. A terrified officer appeared on the screen, her uniform burned and torn. Smoke and fire raged behind her. Emergency broadcast. Her voice was panicked, barely holding together. This is Commander Elise Vaughn of the United Earth Defense Force. We are under attack. Jake shot to his feet. What? From who? The camera shook violently, and a deep rumbling explosion followed. Elise looked back in horror before turning to the screen again. Unknown ships, stealth class. They just appeared out of nowhere. We've lost. The transmission cut out. Jake's chest tightened. He turned to Lorana. Tell me that was a glitch. Lorana's face was grim. No, that was an attack. Zira cursed under her breath. They're targeting Earth. Jake's hands clenched into fists. The Council did this. Lorana nodded, or someone acting on their behalf. Jake's heart pounded. They weren't just threatening him anymore. They were coming after his home. And they thought he wouldn't fight back. They were wrong. The race to defend Earth. Jake slammed his fist on the war table. We need to get to Earth. Now. The Eterna Prime's engines roared to life, along with an entire fleet of elite Imperial warships. In minutes, the most powerful armada in the galaxy was moving at full speed toward Earth. Jake's thoughts raced. Who was behind this attack? Why now? And most importantly, was Earth already lost? He turned to Lorana. How long until we reach the Sol system? She checked the coordinates. At maximum speed. 6 hours. Jake's stomach tightened. 6 hours. That might be too late. But he had no choice. The siege of Earth. When they arrived, Jake felt his blood run cold. Earth's orbit was a battlefield. Explosions lit up the sky as human defense ships fought desperately against an invading fleet. Gigantic black warships hovered over the planet, launching energy blasts into the atmosphere. Earth's moon base was already in flames, its structure collapsing into deep space. And worst of all, there were no Imperial ships defending Earth. Jake's jaw clenched. This wasn't just an attack. This was a betrayal. The Council had deliberately pulled back Imperial forces, leaving Earth defenseless. Jake's home was supposed to be protected under the Empire's rule. But now it was being sacrificed to send him a message. Lorana turned to him. Orders. Jake's voice was ice cold. We fight. A desperate battle. The Eterna Prime's cannons roared, launching a devastating attack on the enemy fleet. Imperial warships descended into the chaos, engaging in dogfights with the mysterious attackers. Jake's hands gripped the command console. Who are they? A holographic scan identified the invaders. Lorana's expression darkened. They're mercenaries. Zira cursed. Hired guns. That means the real enemy is hiding behind them. Jake exhaled sharply. He knew exactly who had sent them. The Council. This was their way of saying, you don't control the Empire. We do. But they had underestimated him. Boarding the enemy flagship. As the battle raged, Jake realized one thing. They needed to take out the mercenary leader, whoever was commanding this attack. If we cut off the head, Jake said, the body falls apart. Zira grinned. I like how you think. Jake didn't hesitate. Prep a strike team. We're boarding their flagship. Inside the lion's den, Jake, Axira, and a squad of elite soldiers launched in a stealth shuttle, dodging enemy fire as they approached the enemy's command vessel. They breached the hull, landing inside the flagship's docking bay. The moment the doors opened, they were under fire. Gunfire erupted, energy bolts flying past them as Jake and his team pushed forward. Axira moved like a shadow, cutting through enemy forces with terrifying precision. Jake wasn't a trained soldier, but he fought with pure determination, firing his blaster and taking down enemies as they advanced. Finally, they reached the command bridge, and standing at the center was a familiar figure. Commander Tovak. Jake's eyes narrowed. "You?" Tovak sneered. "Surprised, human. You embarrassed me in our last battle. I wanted revenge." Jake raised his blaster. "You attacked my home." Tovak grinned. "I was paid well to do it." Jake didn't hesitate. He fired. The blast hit Tovak square in the chest, sending him crashing into a console. The mercenary leader collapsed, his body motionless. Jake turned to Tyra. "Tell the fleet, take out the remaining forces. Earth stays protected." Tyra grinned, with pleasure. Victory, but at a cost. The battle was won. The remaining mercenaries fled after their leader was killed. Earth was safe. But Jake knew this was just the beginning. The Council had tried to break him. They had failed. But next time, they wouldn't use mercenaries. Next time, they would come for him directly. Lorana approached him, her expression unreadable. "What now?" she asked. Jake exhaled. "Now." He looked down at Earth, his home. Then up at the Empire he now ruled. "Now, we take the fight to them." The final battle and Jake's ultimate choice. Jake Carter had saved Earth, but he knew this was far from over. The mercenary attack had been a warning from the Imperial Council, a message that he was not in control, that they ruled the Empire, and if he kept interfering, they would erase him. But Jake wasn't about to sit back and wait for them to make the next move. If the Council wanted war, he would bring it to their doorstep. The War Council, planning the impossible. Jake stood in the war room aboard Eterna Prime, surrounded by his most trusted allies, Lorana, Tyra, and a handful of commanders still loyal to him. The holographic map of the Empire hovered in front of them, glowing lines tracing the routes of major military outposts, hidden strongholds, and fleet movements. Lorana gestured at a flashing red marker. "This is the Council's seat of power, Celestis Prime. It is the most heavily fortified world in the Empire." Tyra smirked. "Which means we're going there, aren't we?" Jake nodded. "Yeah. We're not waiting for them to strike again. We're taking the fight to them." One of the admirals, a tall, reptilian alien with golden eyes, hissed in disbelief. "Attacking the Council is suicide. Their defenses are impenetrable. Their fleets outnumber us 10 to 1. Jake didn't flinch. "Then we'll have to be smarter than them." The room fell silent. He stepped forward, pointing at the holographic display. "If we attack head-on, we lose. But the Council's greatest strength is also their weakness. They think they're untouchable. They believe their own propaganda, that no one would ever dare come for them." Lorana's eyes narrowed. "What are you suggesting?" Jake grinned. "We don't fight their fleets. We go straight for the Council chamber. We cut off the head of the snake." The room exploded into murmurs. Tyra folded her arms. "You're talking about an assassination mission." Jake nodded. "Exactly. We land a strike team on Celestis Prime, infiltrate the Council's inner sanctum, and eliminate their leaders." Lorana hesitated. "And if we fail?" Jake's voice hardened. "Then we all die, and the Empire remains under their control." A tense silence followed. Then Tyra grinned. "Sounds fun. When do we start?" Infiltrating the heart of the Empire. 3 days later, Jake and his strike team boarded a stealth cruiser, heading straight for Celestis Prime. The plan was simple. Phase 1. The fleet would stage a fake attack on the outer defenses, drawing the Council's forces away. Phase 2. The strike team, Jake, Tyra, Lorana, and a handful of elite operatives, would infiltrate the palace. Phase 3. They would confront the Council and end this war permanently. Jake sat in the cockpit, staring at the distant glow of Celestis Prime. This was it. Everything had led to this moment. There was no turning back now. The betrayal, They slipped past planetary defenses undetected, landing inside a hidden docking bay deep within the palace. Zyra took point, her weapons drawn. We moved fast and quiet. No mistakes. The halls were eerily silent as they advanced. Too silent. Jake's gut twisted. Something felt wrong. Then, the walls exploded. Gunfire erupted from the shadows, energy blasts tearing through the corridor. Jake hit the ground, barely dodging a bolt that burned into the wall beside him. "It's a trap," Lorena shouted. The ambush was brutal. They were surrounded. Dozens of elite guards poured in from every direction. Jake spun around, firing, but the enemy numbers were overwhelming. Then, a familiar cold voice rang out over the chaos. "Surrender, Emperor Carter. It is over." Jake turned, and his blood froze. Standing on the balcony above them was Chancellor Vorsk, the Council's most dangerous member, the man who had tried to undermine him from the beginning. Vorsk smirked. "Did you really think we wouldn't see this coming?" Jake clenched his teeth. "You left Earth undefended. You sent mercenaries to kill me. You betrayed your own people." Vorsk shrugged. "You were never meant to sit on that throne, human." Jake tightened his grip on his blaster. "Then let's settle this right now." Vorsk laughed. "Oh, I'm afraid you're mistaken." Then, the floor beneath them collapsed. Jake felt himself falling, crashing into a dark chamber below. The final confrontation. Jake landed hard on a metal platform. The room was massive, filled with pulsing energy conduits. And at the center, a throne. But it wasn't empty. A figure sat upon it, hidden in shadows. And then, the voice spoke. "Finally, we meet." Jake's heart stopped. The figure leaned forward, revealing a face Jake had seen before. A face that should have been dead. The true Emperor, the one he had supposedly replaced. The one who had vanished without a trace. Jake staggered back. "You're supposed to be dead." The Emperor smiled. "You took my throne. Now, you will give it back." The Emperor's plan. Jake's mind raced. The Emperor had never truly disappeared. He had allowed the Empire to believe he was gone. He had watched from the shadows as Jake unknowingly stepped into his place. And now, he wanted it all back. "You think you're a hero," the Emperor sneered. "You think you can change the Empire. You have no idea what you're dealing with." Jake clenched his fists. "You abandoned your people." The Emperor rose from the throne. "I did what was necessary. And now, you will die for your arrogance." Lightning crackled around the Emperor's hands, pure energy surging with unstoppable power. Jake had seconds to react. Then, the Emperor attacked. Jake's ultimate choice. The battle was furious. The Emperor was inhumanly strong, unleashing attacks that shattered walls and sent Jake flying across the chamber. Lorena and Zyra fought desperately, but the Emperor's power was unstoppable. Jake staggered to his feet, blood trickling from his forehead. This was it. He had one chance. One final choice. Run and save himself, or stand and fight, even if it meant dying. Jake took a deep breath. Then he charged. He dodged the Emperor's next attack, slid beneath his defenses, and plunged his blade into the tyrant's heart. The Emperor froze, eyes wide. Then he collapsed. It was over. Jake had won. The dawn of a new era. The Empire was free. The Council had fallen. The people rejoiced. And Jake, he was finally ready to rule. Not as a tyrant, not as a conqueror, but as the first true emperor of the people. And this was only the beginning.